By the way, Denise is a phenomenal speaker. Hire her now today.
Thank you, Adam.
I've seen her
I'll give you your commission later.
Yes. Check. Well, welcome to the Customers That Stick YouTube channel. I am here with my buddy, Denise Lee Yohn. Denise is a go-to expert on brand leadership for national media outlets. She's an in-demand speaker, a consultant, a writer, and she has a new book out. It is called Fusion. Denise, welcome.
Hello, Adam. Thanks for having me on your show.
I am so happy to have you. I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about you because you have such a fantastic resume that I know people are going to want to know. Then we're going to talk about Fusion and all kinds of great stuff. Denise is also the author of the best-selling book, What Great Brands Do, the 7 brand building principles that separate the best from the rest. She's been on Fox Business, CNBC, the Wall Street Journal, NPR, and of course, all that pales in comparison to today, where she has achieved her life dream of appearing on the Customers That Stick YouTube channel.
Amen.
Hey, look, I mean, you're working your way up in the world, Denise. That's
I am.
Well, she is a regular contributor to Harvard Business Review. Forbes has written for Fast Company, Entrepreneur, Knowledge at Wharton, and all kinds of others. And the good thing about Denise is she doesn't just talk about this stuff. She has lived it and lives it still. She had several high-level positions in advertising, client-side marketing, lead strategist, advertising agencies for Burger King and Land Rover. Then she went on to head Sony Electronic Inc.'s first ever brand office, where she was the vice president, general manager of brand strategy, and garnered major corporate awards. I've got a few of those in my pocket. I like to keep them, but Denise has the real one.
I sleep with them under my pillow, you know.
I printed mine out as Photoshop, but you know, we got them. But she consults today, so she's still active, and consulting clients include Target, Oakley, and Dunkin' Donuts, among others. Denise, you've done so much. Let's do some more.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, and this is the culmination of it all.
This is it. This is the apex. It's only down here. The bad news, Denise, is it's only downhill from here.
Okay.
No, you have nothing but great heights. But let's start with Fusion. And the obvious first question, why Fusion? Why did you write the book?
Well, I would say there are 2 reasons. One is kind of just generally what I was observing in corporate America and business in general around the world, and then something that specifically happened to me. So generally speaking, I would actually say there's kind of a culture crisis that's going on in business today. You know, whether it's all of the incidents of sexual harassment and discrimination, or whether it's the huge amount of money that we spend collectively on employee engagement, and yet only 13% of employees are engaged. Whether it's companies that are struggling with issues of, diverging workforces and therefore diversity, all of this is creating, I think, a need for having healthy cultures, and yet so many companies have toxic ones instead. So I kind of observed that in general, but then specifically what I was starting to notice in my consulting practice is that the clients who I was most effective at helping undergo some sort of transformation were the ones who were willing to do the hard work of culture building. You know, most of my clients hire me to reposition or reinvigorate or develop their brands in the first place, but so often they are looking for a quick fix, like, well, let's, have a new tagline, or, show us how to do an advertising campaign. And I would really need to work with them on how do you actually build a culture inside your company that then delivers on that brand. And so
hold on. I want to jump in there. You mean the posters on the wall are not enough?
Oh no, right?
That's
come on, you spend so much money on them, right? Now, and we joke about it, but it's so many business leaders, I think that if they just talk about their culture and they have a mission statement and values, they're all set. And I think nothing could be further from the truth. So after a particularly frustrating experience I had with one client, I decided I need to write down what I know and do more research so I could really share what do the companies that have the most successful cultures really do.
That is a good thing to do. Because, one of the things I think culture leaves clues, right? And that's one of the fascinating things about the book to me is you have so many examples and such rich sort of, different approaches through companies. I guess examples is the best word, but I don't want to say case studies because I'm not sure if they're that deep, but really many case studies, right, in the book where you really look at how companies have built culture and what they've done. And I want to get into some of those examples when we get further in the interview, but what I want to ask you now is about this intersection of brand and culture, because there are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
books on culture, and I'll be honest, I have my issue with some of them because they can be sort of fluffy and culture, culture, culture. And yours is very practical, which I love. But
Mm.
where did the brand part come in? How did you find this intersection of brand and culture?
Right. Well, when I researched what some of the world's greatest companies did to become so successful, whether that's, kind of the companies that we've admired for years, Starbucks and Southwest Airlines, as well as I think new companies that are successfully disrupting the world as we know it, like Amazon and like Salesforce, when you really look at what they're doing with their culture is that they are aligning and integrating that with their brand so that they are truly operating on the inside the way that they are claiming to be on the outside. And I think that you're right, so many books about culture these days talk about the importance of culture, but then don't necessarily show you how to build one. And so what I wanted to do was say, here's my ingoing premise. You need to align and integrate your brand and culture, and then now I'm going to show you exactly how to do that.
Well, excellent. And I think when you look at brand, so many people view it as like image, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's something not as deep as what I think having read your books, having seen you speak. And by the way, Denise is a phenomenal speaker. Hire her now,
Oh, thank
today.
you.
I've
I'll,
seen her a
I'll give
lot.
you your commission later.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Check is in the mail. Ahem.
Right.
But seriously, I mean, I think they think of it as image, right? I think they think of it as something
Mhm.
very shallow surface. What does what do the
Yeah.
customers see? But it's really who you are, right? It's a representation of
Yes.
who you are externally and internally. So the question I have is, when they're not aligned, right? When this brand and this culture are not aligned, what happens?
Right. Well, first of all, I think that you fail people's test of authenticity. And I think what people crave now more than anything is authenticity from the companies that they either buy from or that they want to work for. They want to know that they are making smart choices about who they do business with. And so I think first of all, you ruin that kind of trust that you could be building with your customers and employees. Also, you could also waste a lot of money and efforts on culture building if you are directing them at the wrong things. I think a lot of business leaders think, well, if we just have great perks and throw great parties, we'll have a great culture. And so they put their energies towards those things, which may have some effect on making your employees happy, but they do very little to prepare your employees to work in the specific ways that produce the results that you want. So you could actually be wasting a lot of effort. And then I think probably even more serious than that are the problems that disconnects between brand and culture can have. For example, Wells Fargo and the incidents that they had with the employees opening fake checking accounts and fake bank credit card accounts for their customers. They were doing this because their managers were pushing them to produce these impossible numbers. And I think that, finding out about that alone was particularly surprising to people, but I think it was, or I should say particularly disappointing, but I think was particularly surprising was the fact that Wells Fargo wasn't this like wholesome, old-fashioned kind of, good old American values kind of brand that we knew it to be based on everything that they had been saying for so many years, and in their advertising and with your Stagecoach logo and just kind of this old fashioned brand identity. And so you not only, I think if there was another company, I won't name them, but if there was another company that was known for being cutthroat and performance oriented and very metrics driven, and then we found out this was happening, it'd be like, oh yeah, okay, well, it's not great. I mean, they were doing deceptive practices, but we're not surprised. Whereas when you have this kind of disconnect, I think that it that much more, it becomes harder to repair after the fact.
Right, because there's that expectation. There's a disappointment factor, right? I mean,
Yes.
essentially they're
Yes.
disappointed. And what's interesting, and you brought up the Wells Fargo thing, and this is something I talk about in like customer experience and customer experience leadership, which is that the idea that incentives send a message, and that
Mm.
incentives are reflective to me of culture. So how do you feel? Because in the Wells Fargo case, you've got a very big case of incentives sort of giving you skewed behaviors and giving you unanticipated
Mm-hmm.
behaviors. So
Mm-hmm.
how
Mm-hmm.
do incentives play into this at all?
Yeah, they absolutely do. And I would contrast two airline companies right now, United and Southwest. And I have to say, before I dive into these examples, I don't know as much as I probably should about these two companies and their incentive programs. But what I do know is that recently United had made this announcement that they were going to be changing their incentive program. So rather than giving all their employees some sort of bonus based on performance, they were going to change to some sort of lottery system where you would, based on your performance, get entered to win certain cash prizes and certain other prizes. And there was this huge uproar among their employees about this change, saying, this is my livelihood. I don't want to be gambling or entering to win what I think I deserve if I perform really well. And so some people could say, look at that and be like, incentives are just kind of a bad idea. Look, if you give them, everyone takes them for granted, and if you don't give them, then you get the results like this. But on the other hand, I think Southwest does very well with their incentive program because it's designed around their values. It's very much, they're very performance oriented, but I think that it's more shared performance metrics and on things that I think the employees feel are very fair and attainable. So to your point, I think incentives definitely send a message, and so you can use them either for good or for ill. And you need, as a CEO, I would say that here's your opportunity to cultivate your culture using incentives.
Right. And to watch out for unanticipated consequences, right? To watch out
Yes.
for we only have incentives in this very narrow area. And as such, all of these other areas that are important to us are ignored.
Right. Exactly.
So let's get back to employees and incentives. So one thing that you talk
Mhm.
about in your book is employee engagement and how this alignment between brand and culture impacts employee engagement. So tell us a little bit about that.
Right. Well, employee engagement, I think, is important because you want your employees to be engaged in their jobs and with their managers and with your company. But I would say that you want a more precise and robust type of engagement if you want to succeed as a brand, and that is to have employee brand engagement. You want your employees to know what your brand stands for and how you're different and who your target customers are. You want your employees to feel in their hearts a passion for your brand and for the change that you want to be making in the world. And then you want your employees to be instructed in their hands and their feet to know exactly how to interpret and reinforce your brand in on-brand customer experiences. And so I would suggest that it's not enough just to go after generic employee engagement, but you really want to go after employee brand engagement so that you succeed in delivering on your brand promise in everything that you do.
Nice. Well, that's a perfect segue into the actionable part of your book, which is how do you do that? I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
the short version of some top line things, but
sure,
how do
sure.
you get there? Because everybody, this is where the other books didn't mention, but mentioned in the aggregate, I've found some failings in. It was just like la di da da
Yeah.
culture. Here's what Zappos does. Congratulations.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, good luck with that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And they didn't profit for like a decade, but okay, still you can do it.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, so how do you do it? That's the part I love about your book is the actionable
Mhm.
tips and strategies.
Yeah. So there, you need to lay the foundation, which is comprised of a couple things I'll describe, and then there are 5 strategies or 5 steps that I include in the book. So just quickly on the foundation, the first aspect of the foundation is to ensure that you have an overarching purpose and a single set of core values for your organization. So you don't want to have like a mission statement that's disconnected from your brand purpose. You want to have an overarching purpose that applies to everything that you do. Same thing with your core values. You don't want to have values that describe what you expect from your employees, which is different from what you would want your customers to expect from you. So single set of core values and an overarching purpose. The other part of laying the foundation is ensuring that you as a leader take responsibility for building culture. Culture doesn't just happen. Certainly you can't mandate or force a culture, but you can certainly create an environment where your desired culture comes through and is cultivated. And so as a leader, you need to take responsibility for that. Once you lay that foundation, then we go into those 5 strategies or 5 steps. And so I'll just kind of top line this 5. Does
Yeah,
that sound
perfect.
good? Okay.
Sounds good.
So the first one is to organize and operate on brand. I mean, use your organizational design and your operational processes to cultivate your desired culture. Culture is not just an input to your operations, like if you have a good culture, you'll be operationally excellent, but it can also be an output. Depending on how you operate, you actually cultivate your culture. So that's number one. Number two is to, I hope I'm saying this, yeah, two is create culture changing. I'm like, oh, hopefully I didn't miss anything. Create culture changing employee experiences. Just as you would design customer experience by looking at different segments of customers and their customer journey through with your company, you want to do the same thing for employees, because employees can't and won't deliver experiences to customers that they haven't experienced themselves.
So do you go as
that's
far
the second
as,
one.
well,
Go ahead.
I'll make sure you reset at number 3, but so do you go as
Okay.
far as to recommend like employee journey mapping and things like that?
Absolutely. Yes. And I did this with a client, and it was just amazing for us to break down. We identified 10 different kind of stages or steps in that journey. And then we kind of talked about what were the threads that we wanted to make sure went through all of them, and then what were the specific experiences we wanted employees to have in each one of those, just as you would customers. It's a discipline that I think few companies are doing now, but I think you'll see more and more do as they realize that just leaving their employee experiences up to chance is the equivalent to leaving your customer experiences up to chance too.
Nice.
Yeah. So 3 is to sweat the small stuff in your employee experience in your daily organizational life. So I think about things like rituals and artifacts, policies and procedures, all the small things that you do as an organization that actually communicate big messages to your employees. Kind of like we were talking about the incentives thing. You might think, oh, that's just one part of our performance program. I could see the United leaders being like, oh, let's try something new, and they don't realize what a big impact something small like that can have. So you want to sweat the small stuff. Then the 4th action is to ignite your transformation through employee brand engagement. So we just talked about this, where you want to develop employee brand engagement experiences, develop tools that will help your employees understand and use your brand, develop internal communications campaigns so that you really inspire passion for your brand, everything to really make sure that your employees have that critical link to your brand, to your customer. And then the 5th strategy or 5th step is to build your brand from the inside out. Because a lot of what I've been talking about so far is about using your brand to shape your culture, but you can also use your culture to shape your brand. If you tie specific actions like a new product or a new service or a new initiative to your purpose and values and say, hey, this is why we're doing it, you are using your culture to define your brand identity to your customers. So it's a great way to achieve brand culture fusion by moving your brand closer to your culture. So those are the 5 strategies, kind of, as in brief.
Very nice. And we wrapped all the way back to the name, Fusion, brand culture.
Yes.
Fusion. Hold on, I got to do it like that. All right. Well,
I should do that also, because I usually do this, but then that usually makes me think of, like, in sign language, I think this means like more. Oh, yeah. So I wonder what this means. I should find out.
Yeah, make sure I just didn't do something inappropriate and let me know, please.
Right. In some Eastern European country, I'm like doing this, and they're like, ah,
no. You're fired.
Right.
Okay. Well, bad gestures aside, I'm going to ask you one final question. Summing all this up, what do you wish leaders would take away from Fusion?
Mm-hmm. I think the number one message is that your culture needs to be as unique as your brand. I think that many people look at companies like Starbucks and Southwest Airlines and think, oh, well, let's try to copy that kind of culture. We should adopt that kind of culture here. And it's not surprising, because so much of the existing rhetoric says your culture needs to be warm and friendly and supportive and inclusive. And the problem with that is that if you have a culture that's the same as everyone else, you're going to get results that are the same as everyone else. But you actually want to be a great brand and build a great organization. And so you need to operate in unique ways. And by fusing together your brand and your culture, you actually get that uniqueness.
I can't believe you just did that on this video. Jeez, what are you doing?
It's going to be banned on YouTube now.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to get a rating or something, whatever they do.
Right.
Fortunately, you can see I don't know what they do because I run a clean show. I'm just saying. Well, that's
Yeah,
also,
right.
you know, one thing that's interesting in that last little point is that you can't photocopy culture, right? I mean, you can take these principles, you can take the action plan, infusion, those action steps, but you've got to find your own way and find your own culture. I think that's a great message to leave on. So finally, Denise, thank you so much for being here. It's awesome as always. Whenever we talk, you're always the smartest person in the room. So there's that. It's a very small sample set, I'll grant you, but you're still there.
Wow, I feel great now.
You should. But please let people know where they can find you. We'll post the stuff up on the video too, but where they can find your book, find you, all that.
Sure. Please go to my website, deniseleeyohn.com. And that's really a portal to everything that you would want. If you go to deniseleeyohn.com/fusion, that's where you can learn specifically about the book, as well as access downloadable materials and additional content. You get updates on the companies that I write about in the book. And then you actually have links to where you can buy the book. But also, reach out to me on Twitter. Denise Lee Yohn is my handle. Adam, I think I feel like maybe that's how we met. I'm not sure. But I love to connect with people and meet new people through Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's all Denise Lee Yohn everywhere.
Awesome. All right. Well, Denise, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Congrats on the book. And we really appreciate you spending time with us.
Thank you so much, Adam.